Kenny here with Gardening Simplified. Today we're going to talk a little bit about food preservation. We've got our freeze dryer here, and we've had it for about a month, and we've done several batches with it, and we're going to start going over it and showing you how to preserve some of your different vegetables and things that from your garden so that they'll keep and you will have a whole lot less waste. As you've seen earlier in our videos, we had quite a few onions, and what we're doing right now is we're cutting up a bunch of these onions because onions only store for a certain period of time, and after that time they start to spoiling. Well, with this freeze dryer, we don't have to worry about that spoilage anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to we mince these up, and now we're going to put them into the freeze dryer. We're going to pre-freeze them here in the freezer, which that saves time with the freeze dryer having to freeze them. And we're working on some other harvests too. All right, now we've started our freeze dryer, and it has a cool down period that it drops the temperature for about 15 minutes, and then it'll tell you to load the chamber. And what we're doing now is loading all these chopped up onions in there, and these trays are kind of full. You don't want to fill over the top of the tray. You want to be able to get some air between. Now we're just going to hit continue, and then what it's going to do is it's going to start its process. First, it's going to freeze everything that's in here. It'll drop it down to below zero. Once it gets to a cold enough temperature, it's going to start the vacuum pump, and then it'll start warming these trays. So basically what it's doing is it's freezing the food. Now all this food was pre-frozen in the freezer, so what that's going to do is save a lot of time in the freeze dryer because the pre-frozen food, the freeze dryer won't have to freeze it. It'll all be already frozen. Now what it's going to do, the temperature will drop pretty quick as it comes down. Once it gets down to this point, and then it'll kick in the vacuum pump. All right, now it's drying it. It's been drying for about 5 minutes. When it starts drying, what it does is it heats up these the tray holder, so it warms the trays while still freezing, and you'll start seeing ice forming around the edge of it as the moisture comes out. Now up here you have how long it's been going, which right now it's been going 4 hours. That was the biggest part of that, was bringing it below freezing. And this temperature here that's on this is it's the temperature of the sensor on the tray rack. So it's not how cold it actually is around the edge. And this number above it is vacuum, and normally this should be below 500 or thereabout somewhere. The lower the vacuum, the better. But anyway, what it's doing is, the way a freeze dryer works is it freezes everything in there, and then it starts warming, and as it starts warming, the moisture starts being vacuumed off as a gas, because we're pulling a vacuum inside this chamber, and so it doesn't go to a liquid and start coming out. And the consistency of the food is different than if you was dehydrating it versus a freeze dryer, and we can kind of go through that here later on. All right, the process is complete. You can see that it's taken about 18.5 hours, which it's not a fast process. Now we need to get prepared. We're going to bag these up. Now, you have different types of mylar bags. You have some that see-through, some that are foiled. Now, I recommend the foiled for long-term storage. Now, with your Harvest Right machine, they'll send you some gallon bags. Now, these aren't the type that stand up, so they don't have the gusseted bottom. And I prefer these that to put on the shelf. They'll stand up. Now, these they'll have to be put in a box or something. But you want to get a bag that's going to work for the type of food that you're putting up. You want one that's not going to be too large. So once you do open it, you're going to be able to use it up in a period of time. Also, you want to make sure you're going to put in oxygen absorbers in these bags. Now, when you buy these, it's best to buy them to where they're, if you buy 100 of them, make sure they're like in 5 or 10 absorber packs separated. And they have this little dot here. What this is an oxygen sensor. So when there's when there's a lot of oxygen, there's this will turn purple. Now, what I do is I'll pack up get all my stuff packed and ready now, and then I'll put my oxygen absorbers in the packs all at one time and then put them up. If these are exposed to air for a long period of time, the longer they're exposed, the less useful they'll be. And you need to decide what size absorber you're going to use for the size package. Now, these packages here are quart packages, and I'm using a 200cc oxygen absorber. These come in all different sizes, 100, 200, 300, 2,000. You know, it just depends on how big a package or how much air is in there. You can't really use too big a one inside, but you can use too small ones. So if you're going to use for long-term storage, make sure you have one that's big enough for the container. Most manufacturers, when they sell you the bags and the absorbers together, they'll sell the recommended size for that bag. But anyway, we're going to get started here. You want to make sure whenever now that this had finished overnight, and what I did was I took and extended the dry time, and you just push more dry time in for 30 minutes. That gives a chance to warm up the shelves again and make sure that the product in there's warm enough, because if it's cold, it's going to take and start drawing moisture right off, just like a glass of tea would. Now what we're going to do is take these out, and we're going to put them off into our bowl here. It makes it easiest. Now when these are freeze dried like this, it makes them to where they're really easy to crush up. Now, if you wanted to make like a onion powder, you just put it in with your little processor, but you can see how easy this is to crunch up because they're just super lightweight. Now we're going to put a certain amount of these in a bag. These bags should be the right size for us, and you want to make sure when you put it in the bag, use a funnel, because you don't want to get it in the little Ziploc if your bags have Ziplocs. And for me, I recommend buying the ones with the little Ziploc, because if it doesn't, now once I get this in here, we'll just push this down a little bit, and then this will be plenty for this bag, and we'll just fill each one of them about that. Once we close this bag, it's going to kind of wrinkle it up, and so we don't want to have too much in there. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and get these filled up. Any of your unused, once you open one of these packs, any of your unused ones, if you put it in a jar and put the lid on tight, and as you can see, the color of this in here is showing that it's pink, so it's got this absorber still good. But what I'll do is all at one time I'm going to put these absorbers in these packages, and then I'm going to come back and seal. I'll start with the one that's in here. Now I always save my little thing. I've got 2 of them in here. What I'm going to do is just drop these down in here. I'll make sure that they don't come up. Now I'm going to seal this, and what I want to do is take as much air out of this package as I can, and I'll do the same here, because we want to expose these oxygen absorbers as little as possible to the air, because you want them to stay active. As far as now, what I'm going to do is I've got my little heat sealer set up over here already, and I'm making a mess already too. And what I'm going to do is, it's got a timer, so I'll just close it down. It'll go for its time. Now it's sealed, so when you get ready, you've got, these are easy tear off tops. Now what I'll do is label this with the date. Let me go ahead and do the same with this one. Now now that this is processed here, this will be good for 20 to 25 years. That's the big advantage to freeze drying over dehydrating. Once you get and sealing it in mylar. Now you can do the same thing in your canning jars if you want. Put an oxygen absorber in there. I have a vacuum packing attachment which I could pull out more air, and it'll keep for a long time, but it won't keep as long as it will in mylar, because the thing about mylar is it protects from any exchange of air, for one, but it also protects from the light, and that's an important factor whenever it comes to preserving food, because the light can start damaging it too. But anyway, this we'll go ahead and finish up the rest of these. As you can see, this has turned purple because it was exposed to the air. Once I put new absorbers in there, then it'll turn pink. And if it isn't pink and you have them sealed up, then that means your absorbers aren't any good that were in there. So don't use them. Make sure that you have that shows that it's a good absorber in the end. It's very important, make sure you label this, because you can tell if it's no label, you'll never know what you've got inside of here. And also your leftover oxygen absorbers, make sure you label what size they are, because it doesn't say on them, and that way you'll be sure to know what's in that, what those are after you've taken them out of the original package. So anyway, now we're going to go and we're going to start doing some garlic. Before we can start our garlic, what we're going to have to do is defrost this, because what happens is, and you can see on the edge, you have a bunch of moisture. You have probably 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, maybe even 1/2 inch in spots of ice that's formed on there during the process. What you're going to do is you're going to close this up. You're going to make sure the vent's open. You're going to have a bucket here, so your drain hose will drain into it. And you can do no defrost, just crack the door, let it defrost on its own. But if you're going to do another one, what you need to do is defrost. And what this is going to do is heat it up for about 2 hours. And once it does that, now it's going to give you instructions. It says to open the valve, which the valve is open, and take all your stuff out, which that's done too. So we're just going to hit continue, and you can set the time for defrost, but it's automatically set up for 2 hours. And what's going to happen once all this melts, and of course the water's going to come out here, It's going to leave a certain amount of water inside, and we'll kind of go over that once it gets through this process. Garlic is another one of those things that doesn't keep very long. Now, this is the time of year, we're at the end of September, fixing to go into October, so we're fixing to, down here in the 8B, it's about the time that I'm going to put my garlic in the ground. So what I do is I'll take garlic from my spring harvest, and we have this here, but we also have this here. And what I've done is, of course, I take a lot of my elephant garlic here, the big bulbs, or the big bulbs with big cloves in them. These they're better for producing a bigger garlic bulb for next year. If you just plant the little bitty ones, you end up with little bitty cloves, and I can say kind of like you know, you get something like this or something like this when you're planting your little ones. Now sometimes I stick them in the ground anyway, but a lot of these are still pretty good size. I mean, this is elephant garlic, it's pretty good size. But what I've done is I've picked out a nice batch of my two types of garlics, the bulbs that I'm going to keep for planting, and I've taken and this is I've got a couple of different kinds in here of garlic that I plant every year, but these are the ones that I'm going to be freeze drying too. And the first thing I've done with this garlic here, and as you can see, this is elephant garlic. Now a lot of these, now whenever you plant the little what I call garlic seeds, and I talked about them in videos on planting garlic, the first year they don't make a bulb with cloves. It just makes a bulb. Now I cut off a little place off here because whenever you're doing this, you want to make sure that your garlic is, or whatever your produce that you're freeze drying, you want to take off any bad areas on them. But as you can see, like these were planted from the seed. Now these have a good garlic flavor, just like these cloves would, but they're not the really large bulbs just by themselves, because like I say, they when you grow the little seed that the elephant garlic puts off in the ground there, this is what you end up with the first year. Now if you planted this back, you'd end up with a nice large garlic bulb that had cloves, you know, and it would be a nice big bulb. And you could do that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze dry these. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these up into smaller pieces. Have all the garlic freeze dried. We started out with 4.9 or 4 pounds 9 ounces, and we ended up with 1 pound 3 ounces. So there was about 3 pounds of water in all this garlic, just if you want to go technical deal. So what we're doing is we're packaging this up the same way. Now we've finished up, and we freeze dried some red onions, and these are just like the others. They're easily powdered up. So what we're going to do is bag them up just as minced up onions, and that way if we need them for a particular dish, and we can just rehydrate them, or if we're using them for onion powder, we can just powder them up and add them that way. But we'll have the option. Today we're freeze drying some more onions, some red onions, but these we're not putting them in the mylar, we're just putting them in the your regular canning jars. Now when you do this, now these are regular canning jars. We don't have any of the like old mayonnaise jars, stuff like that. But if you are taking and using the freeze dryer for preservation, you can use those type of jars for your storage, because you're not going to be taking water bath in these or pressure canning them or anything like that. You're just going to put the oxygen absorber in there and you're done with it. So when you when you have those used jars, and if you want to recycle stuff, then go that route. I say I don't have the other. This here is an old mayonnaise jar or something. It's not a regular canning jar, but this is where you'd use these type of jars. So if you have them, don't throw them away. Hope that's helpful. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe gained a little bit of knowledge. Now I have an affiliate link for the Harvest Right freeze dryer in the description. And if you want to see more of my videos, just hit that subscribe, hit the bell button, and if you like it, give it a big thumbs up and share this video. It really helps my channel. Happy gardening.